僕から進めてよろしいんですか、飯田先
あ、
生。
お願いします。おなりさんからお願
はい。
いします。はい。
ですね、今日はちょっと、緊張しておりますと。なぜかというと、初めてツアーをすることになったんですよね。美術館の中をツアーするということをさせてもらうことになりましたと。
はい。
で、ワルシャワの国立博物館の、ズザナさんに、シュールレアリストのね、あの、シュールレアリズム、アラミス、Surrealism tendency in Polish art of the 20th century、20世紀のポーランドアートについて紹介してもらうっていうことで、今展示がね、あちらでされているんですよね。だ
そうですね。
からそれをツアーしてくれるということでお願いさせていただきました。これ、飯田先生、ツアーの経験って僕なかなかないんですけど、あります？
ないですね。
オンラインツアー、
オンライン、
美術館。
もうそれこそあれですよ。コロナの時に、
ああ、なるほど。
チェスキークロムロフに
じゃあ、
オン
スキークル
ライン
ムラは。
ツアーしたぐらいですね。
うーん、なるほどね。いや、僕も初めてなんで、こういう時代になったかっていうことと、ね、芸術は生のものを見るものであるから、ね、オンラインどうなのっていうことも、それは考えるし、でもね、行けないところにこうやって、まあ、行った気分のバーチャルになれるものだしね、
うん。
そのオンラインで美術館ツアーをするということに対してもちょっと面白い、こう、疑問を持ちながら、今回迎えたということです。で、
はい。
シュールレアリズムについて、こう、どういう思いとかって、ちょっと流れめちゃくちゃですけど、
あ、
飯田先生なんかあります？シュールレア
はいはい。
リズムについて。
まずシュールレアリズム知らない人たちもいると思うんですけど、後で情報をちょっと上げとくので、まあ、基本的なところを抑えなきゃいけないのは、フランス人のアンドレ・ブルトン。今日の多分ツアーでも何回も名前が出てくると思うんで、押さえといてほしいのが、まあ、シ
うん。
ュールレアリスト宣言っていう、まあ、ダダイズムっていうのが1920年前にちょっと一回起こって、まあ、1920年代だね。1920年代に入ってダダが起こると。で、トリスタン・ツァラっていうのと対立して、まあ、そのダダが生まれるんだけど、そのダダをさらにこう、発展させていった、発展させていく中で、このアンドレ・ブルトンっていう人が、シュールレアリズム宣言っていうのを1920、24年とか25年とかだったと思うんだけど、そのぐらいにするんです。
うん。
で、そのシュールレアリズム宣言っていうのが一体何かっていうと、まあ、そのダダイズムっていうのは、いろんなものとこう、いろんなもの、今までの芸術をこう否定していって新たなものを作り出そうっていう、まあ、宣言みたいなものなんだけど、ダダは。で、そのシュールレアリズムはさらにそこを一歩踏み出していって、新しいものを、まあ、創造したりとか、新しい技法、もともとあった技法を集約して作品を作っていこうとかっていう、あのなんていうのかな。まあ、想像の世界みたいなことを現
うん。
実の世界の中にこう呼び起こしていこうみたいなことをする。まあ、それをまあまとめてアンドレ・ブトロンが、シュールレアリズム宣言っていうのを行う。で、それに、追随した作家がもうたくさん現れてきて、いや、僕もシュールレアリストとして活動していきたいよって言いながら、シュールレアリズムっていう集団が、作品をこう作り始めたっていうのが、まあ、シュールレアリズムとシュールレアリズム宣言っていうのの、まあ、要記です。で、これは、ウィキとかで調べれば結構わかりやすく載ってると思うので、そこら辺をちょっと読ん、もし気になったら見てもらえると、今日のツアーがさらにわかるんじゃないかなと
うん。
思います。モナリさんなんか付け加えありますか？
いやいや、なんかもう本当に、もうめちゃくちゃな時代だなと思うし、
うん、
いろいろに、まあ、今のね、現代の僕たちじゃなくて、その1900年ね、頭の時代とかで、こうやってさっきの宣言っていうものが起きて、
うん、うん、
でもこれはこう、その芸術の産業の中で、こう、やっぱりトレンドとか思想とかいろいろあると思うんだけど、本当なんかこう、このアートを通して人間の特権たるこのなんか思考体系とか哲学っていうものをこう、絵画なり表現にこう、組み込んでいこうって、すごい意識的に働きかけてるから宣言なんであって、なのに、 シュールレアリズムや無意識の探求みたいなことをやってて、無意識の探求言いながらちゃんと視覚の中には残しているわけで、で、めちゃくちゃこう、単純には綺麗だなとか、こう、不思議みたいにのパッと見で思わせる感覚とかを
うん。
作るトリックをちゃんとこう、プロとしてやってるわけで、だからオートマティックとか言ったら、こう、インプロビゼーションで、わーってその場の思いつきでやっちゃいますみたいなことも言いながら、がっつりドローイングして、ここに魚置いてみたらどうなるかな、ここに人置いてみたらどうなるかなとか、こっちピンクだからこっち赤どうだろうとか、その時間の中でいろいろ試行錯誤したりとか、こう、まあ、考えてやってて、で、さらにそこにシュールレアリズムグループみたいな枠にこう自分をこアーティストのプロとして、その中に位置づけていこうという働きさえもあって、
うん。
うん、こういろいろどうなの、どうなのって思ってる、その一つの、なんていうの、グループというか、そういう背景の人たちっていうのを思うから、まあそれがまあ一般的にはね、そのダリだ、ピカソだって、あそこら辺が有名ですけど、で、このポーランドのね、シュールレアリストたちっていうのが、ほうあるんですかっていう話からね、
うん。
何かなんか違いがあるのかな、どうなのかなとかも思うし、まあ、多くのポーランド人とか東ヨーロッパの人たちって、アメリカとかこう、フランスとかに亡命したっていう人多いから、
うん。うん。
だから、留学であり、亡命であり、あっちで活動の場を見つけに行ったであり、まあ理由はいろいろあるんだろうけど、なんか、それで変わったんですかとか、なんか変えたんですかとか、なんかそういうこともちょっと気になったりするし、まあ、
そうです。
ともあれ、うん、あんまり、その、僕たちが知らないところの人たちを見せてくれるだろうから、
うん。
結構期待していきたいなと思ってます。
そうですね。またその遠いの、まあ、東側のヨーロッパの方でのそのシュールレアリズムがどういうふうにこう動いてたのかっていうのが多分ね、今日のツアーとかで、まあ、ポーランドにおけるシュールレアリズムの立ち位置とかもわかるような気がするのが面白そうかなと。
うん。
ちょうど100年前ぐらいですもんね。
おお、100年、100年も経ってさ、100年も経ってんだってば、いろんな意味で。
うん。
すごいよね。
すごいなと思
なんかよく50年とか100年とかで時代は繰り返すとか言うけど、そういう意味で当て込んだら、じゃあ今がシュールレアリズムのまた現代版があるんですかとか逆に遡れたりするし。
う。うん。なんか、日本人はなんかアニメとかよく見るじゃないですか、日本人。
はい。
あれってもう究極のシュールレアリズム的な要素が
なるほ
よく
ど。
思う。なんかその概念的にはね。
うん。
なんか
それ多分、
書いてるものとかは違うかもしれないけど、
うん。
なんかクリーチャー的な要素だったり、なんか
うん。
魔法の表現みたいなことって、割と
うん。
シュールな人たちがやってたこととか、なんかその転生ものが流行ってる別の世
うん。
界軸とか、そういうのは、もう100年前からこういう人たちが考えてたっていう下敷きがあるんじゃないかなとかもよく
なるほどね。
思いますけどね。
うん。それをさ、こう、ある程度今の漫画だ、アニメだっていうんだったらさ、そういう人たちがさ、数人でさ、現代のアニメーションはネオシュールだみたいなことを言えばさ、それが宣言になってさ、
うん。
そそれでこうなんか時代を作っていくっていうことになったりするからね。だからこんな100年前のこのシュールレアリズムの人たちがさ、なんかのノリで始めちゃったこの体系をさ、今100年前にさ、国立博物館がさ、こう大きく取り上げるわけですよ。
うん。
すごいよね。
まあ、
ちょっと国立博物館が展示するのはちょっとチャレンジっぽいなと思っていいなと思ってはいるんですけど。
確かに。うん。
うん。
確かに。なんか、なんかすごいやっぱ意識がすごい、ちゃんとここの部分を紹介したいっていう意識がやっぱあるんだな。
うんうん。そうだよね。
うん。
面白いよね。
ということで、
さらにさ、そこで、いや、
うん。
行きましょう、行きましょう。はい、もうツアーを始めましょ
実は始まっちゃうから、
う。ザンナソウルさんに、はい、
スザンナ
ザンナ、
さんに、
ザンナソウルさんにお願いしましょうと。
してもらいたいと思います。
はい。
ということで動画は、美術館の入り口に、これから入っていきますんで、ゆっくり鑑賞していただいて、作品見ながら、皆さんも質問事項、動画終わった後、ズザンナさんに回答できるように送れますんで、準備してください。はい。それでは今日もおなえさんよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。
はい。
Okay, so my name is Zuzanna Szor, and I work at the Education Department of the National Museum in Warsaw, and I welcome you to the National Museum in Warsaw today. Behind me, you can see the main hall of the museum, and I will now turn the camera to show you the entrance to the temporary exhibition, where I will take you, and I will make a small introduction already inside.
Oh.
So now you can see the entrance to the exhibition, where I will take you. Please let me know if the picture is not clear, then I will try to move more slowly so that you can see everything properly. The title of our exhibition is Surrealism Other Myths. Here at the entrance, you can see the first part of this title. And now let me take you inside. So the first artwork is already here.
Oh.
It's a blinking book by Slavs and Tatars Collective that welcomes us to the exhibition. And now I will go inside.
Wow.
So this year, we're celebrating 100 years of the surrealist movement, because in 1924, André Breton, a French poet, published his first surrealist manifesto in Paris. And this is a symbolic date that marks the beginning of the surrealist movement in France. For this occasion, many museums organize exhibitions, and many celebrations around the world take place to mark 100 years of surrealism. And our exhibition is also a part of it. In this historic moment, we're celebrating surrealist tendencies in Polish art, which the exhibition talks about. And it's not an obvious connection, because the surrealist movement centered around André Breton was a very formal group. The surrealists in Paris had a manifesto. They had a very closed boundaries of the group. And for many years, surrealism was considered to be a closed movement, geographically and timely limited. Some consider the year 1966, the year of André Breton's death, as the end of surrealism. But in the recent years, many research projects and exhibition projects took place that aim at understanding surrealism more broadly, as not such a limited dogmatic movement only, but as a more broader problem, as a more let's say broader tendency in art. And this is the case here, because Polish artists never were a part of Breton's circle in Paris. Also in Poland, there wasn't a surrealist, official surrealist group. Because after the surrealism movement started in France, in the consequent years, it expanded to other countries around the world. Surrealist ideas spread around the world, and in some places, other official surrealist groups, more formal surrealist groups were created, like, for example, Great Britain or Japan. For example, in Poland, it never happened. There was no formal group that would identify itself as a surrealist group. So the connections that you will see here in this exhibition are more broad. The exhibition is project that aims to explore different surrealist symptoms in Polish art of the 20th century, to interpret some of the avant-garde artists' works from the surrealist perspective. So our exhibition is a part of this recent broader understanding of surrealism as a very complex set of ideas, concepts, and a more unlimited tendencies in art.
Mhm.
So here I will turn again so that from now on you can see with the exhibition. This is the first room of the exhibition, and already the first thing that you will notice here is the exhibition's architecture, because the arrangement of artworks in space and the space itself is also not a coincidence. The arches here that we will see throughout the tour, and the general spatial organization of this show reflects some of the Giorgio De Chirico artworks that you may recall, with those arches that refer also to surrealist and 20th century art architecture. So that's one thing. On the other hand, the architecture of this exhibition was also meant to recall the historical surrealist exhibitions, because surrealist exhibitions were often organized as big installations. Not only artworks hang on the walls, but they would be a very complex spatial creations, very often being seen as like an exhibition would be seen as one big installation. So you will see this throughout the tour. And in this first room, we have artworks that show us a little insight into the beginnings of what we can see here as surrealism in Polish art. The beginnings of surrealism in Poland is associated with the birth of Artes, Association of Visual Artists. That's the name of the group, Artes, that was formed in Lviv, now Ukraine, around in 1929. So the 20s is the time when this movement is born, and then develops over the course of the 30s. And here in front of me, you can see one of the artworks of Marek Włodarski, also known as Henryk Stręg. I will now show you how we write his name. He has two names because he was an artist who changed his name during the Second World War. Before the war, his name was Henryk Stręg. He came from Lviv, and he was an artist of Jewish origin. This is why he changed his name during the Second World War, when he had to hide, he had to change his identity, and therefore he started using a more Polish sounding name. So since the Second World War, he is known as Marek Włodarski. You can also see his signature on this painting. Can you see it here?
Oh.
Which is interesting because this artwork was created in the 1930s, so when he was still using the name Henryk Stręg. But during the war, he scratched out his signature off many of his paintings and changed it to his new name.
Mm-hmm.
So but before the war, he was a part, and he was one of the founders of the Artes, Association of Visual Artists, and he was greatly inspired by surrealism. Many of those artists were traveling to Paris and France. They would see the beginnings of the surrealist movement there. They would see the exhibitions. Some of them met André Breton. Marek Włodarski was one of them. He very casually met André Breton, and he mentions it in his letters. And he describes also that he saw the first surrealist exhibition in 1925 in Paris, and he recalls that it made a very big impression on him. So in his artworks, in this one, for example, we can see those inspirations. We can see this strange character of a sorcerer, a wizard, who's doing some unidentified gestures. He's preparing maybe something with this chemical resembling machinery. Next to him, we see this green wall, this green rock that might remind us also of a tree trunk. All of this composition is very strange. It might remind us of some scenes from a dream, or something that is between the reality and dream, maybe between conscious and unconscious pictures that appear in our minds before we fall asleep. And this was very typical for surrealists. This was a very important thing for André Breton, who already in his first manifesto was talking about the necessity of removing the line between conscious and subconscious. Despite that, many of the artists from the artist group knew about those ideas, knew the manifesto, were very familiar with surrealist art. These resemblances here are mainly on the formal level. They were inspired by the strange oniric landscapes. They were fascinated by underwater life, by the pictures that appear in our minds during a dream. But their work was less dogmatic, was less formally described. They were mainly interested in the formal discoveries of the surrealists, and this is what we can see here. I will show you some close-ups.
Mm-hmm.
Here you can see another painting of the same artist, which title is Dream.
Dream.
So let's move to the next part. Next part of this room is also dedicated to works of artists from the same association, but it shows us also some works on paper. I would like to draw your attention especially to these collages, because another thing that these artists incorporated from surrealists, from French surrealists at that time, was experiments with various new, for them, techniques. This was, for example, collage, a very important and very widely explored technique by the French surrealists. And artists from the Artists Association were the first ones in Poland to incorporate these techniques and these experiments in their work. So here you can see some examples of collage.
Mm-hmm.
But artists from the artist group would also experiment broadly with photography.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I take you to the next room, which is dedicated entirely to surrealist photography. This room we are entering right now.
This room is wall. It's very circle? Like
Yeah, this room is turned into a shape of an oval. You can see it here. I will take another step back.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it here that it can resemble an egg. There is this construction inserted into a normal room of the exhibition. So we are now entering this oval space. And the first thing on the left that I will show you is a couple of photo montages by Aleksander Krzywobłocki, who was another artist working with the Artists Association. So you can already here, you can see how many inspirations they would take from the surrealist movement. They were inspired by the oniric landscapes, fascinated with the unusual forms, unusual creations and compositions, but also explored as the first ones in Poland those techniques, collage and photomontage. Here is one of them. For example, Aleksander Krzywobłocki would often incorporate depictions of hands that would organize his compositions. But there was more to photography than photomontage, because the first thing that you can do is montage from life. This is a name of an artistic action that also Aleksander Krzywobłocki used to create. Montage from life, as he would call, is technically a normal photography, photography taken from life, but he was trying to create compositions that would not seem as natural scenes. So here we can see people lying on the rocks, and this is an unmanipulated photography. But the scene, the situation is arranged in a strange way, as if we could think in the first moment that it's a collage or photomontage, that those people are inserted into the landscape. So he was interested in creating those strange situations and photograph them the way they would resemble maybe manipulated photographic prints. Then there are also other photo montages that you can see here, and photo collages. So different way of manipulating a picture that these artists used to create those unreal compositions and discover unusual connections between different worlds, different realities, because this was the original purpose of the collage and photomontage, was the surrealist interest in finding the less obvious connections, in finding, discovering new meanings in often everyday objects, and combining them by collage or photomontage in one composition would suddenly reveal new meanings and new senses. But surrealists also experimented with other techniques, for example, creating photograms. These are some examples of the photograms, so photographic prints made without the use of a camera, simply by placing objects on a photosensitive paper or other substance. And in this way, by placing everyday objects, they would achieve these strange, unusual effects that later could be interpreted and could reveal completely new forms. So here you can see some of them. One of the most famous artists who used this technique was Man Ray, who used this technique with multiple multiple light exposure.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, this is a composition by Marek Piasecki. There will be more of his works that I will show you. His artwork, his photograph is also placed here next to a photograph by Raoul Ubak, because in this exhibition we show mainly Polish artists, but there are also some works by international artists from the Bretons movement as well, to show the artworks we want to emphasize here in a broader context. So here you can see you can see here compositions, brulages by Raoul Ubak, who was trying to achieve new forms and new effects by burning the photographic emulsion, the light sensitive emulsion, and therefore creating these forms. But next to it, we can see works by Marek Piasecki, who was working in a similar way, just that he was manipulating the photosensitive material with acid. And another artist that I would like to point out here is Fortunata Obrąpalska. She was a photographer and a chemist. She studied chemistry at the University of Vilnius, and then she became familiar with photography, and she became fascinated by photography. And these are some of her works. The two most significant areas of her work is first macro photography, also something very interesting for surrealists who would seek unusual meanings and forms in everyday objects. So what do these compositions remind you of? Like what would be your first association? For most people, this reminds of the surface of the moon or some other planet. But in reality, Fortunata Obrąpalska took pictures of the potato peel. So a peel of a vegetable that everybody has at home can remind us of those cosmic landscapes. The same here. This photograph can resemble a galaxy, but in fact it's a spider's web. So not only Fortunata Obrąpalska, but also other photographers at the time were trying to change the meaning of everyday object and to find surrealist coincidence and effects in our closest surroundings. And another very interesting project of hers is this series of photographs, which she took experiments of the diffusion in liquid. So she would put black ink in a container with water, and then observe how those liquids interact with each other and dissolve. And she took these photographs of them. Then you can see them here placed upside down, because upside down she would interpret them in a very poetic way. One of them is entitled A Dancer, another Silence. This one we can see here, that's a negative print, and it can remind us more of, for example, a flame, a fire. So these experiments with liquids and photography, she is most known for.
Yeah, very beautiful.
Yeah, and now I will take you to the third room, which is dedicated mainly to art from the 40s and 50s. and it's called internal models. The 40s and 50s, so post Second World War period, and these artworks' main reference is the war experience and very often war trauma, because the tragedy of war changed everything for many of these artists. Some of them were part of the Artes Association. Some of them were familiar with the avant-garde movements before the Second World War. One of them is Erna Rosenstein. She's perhaps one of the most famous artists in Poland whose work is associated with surrealism. This is one of her paintings entitled Monuments. And here you can see another one.
Wow.
And the title is Hell Flowers. Erna Rosenstein was also born in Lviv in a Jewish family. And she, before the war, she studied in Krakow, she studied in Vienna. She also traveled to Paris. She saw the surrealist exhibition in 1937 in Paris, and she was also very influenced by it. She was very impressed by it. However, she used to not call herself a surrealist. She insisted on the idea of art where the art represents the internal life of an artist only, and she would often protest to be called a surrealist. And despite that, her art is most usually associated with these concepts and with the surrealist ideas. Her works are most often interpreted in the context of her war experiences. Because of her Jewish origins, she and her family had to hide in various places for long periods of time, and she was a witness of the murder of her parents. So these experiences that she only shared at the end of her life are seen in her works, and her paintings are most often interpreted through these traumatic experiences of this tragedy. But it was not only the case of Erna Rosenstein's work. Here in this room, you can see more artworks that can be associated with the war trauma experiences, and the surrealist techniques and surrealist language was often adapted by them as a way of dealing with those experiences, and as a way of connecting with emotions. I would like to read you a quote from one of the artists who described it very, very straightforward. The artist's name is Zbigniew Dłubak, and he claimed that the surrealist method was to enable a more direct connection with the emotions. He wrote, now I quote, "Surrealism to me is more the wartime and post-war situation rather than an art movement. It seemed to us that by making use of surrealist methods, we could reveal those layers in the human psyche that might shed light, if you could get to them, on the essence of what had happened during the war and immediately afterwards." So this was what Zbigniew Dłubak explained, how the surrealist language and surrealist method was seen by him, and not only him, as a way of connecting with those traumatic experiences and as dealing with those wartime experiences. So in the artworks gathered in this room, we can see also some collages and other techniques. Many of them deal with the topic of a human body. Very often is deformed human body or parts of it that can be seen through the lens of the wartime experiences.
Very sensitive.
Yes, many of them are works on paper, like in this example. These are works by Jerzy Skarżyński.
This artwork size is A4 size or
This
small?
I can show you for the
Yeah,
scale.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guidebook of our exhibition that I was reading the quote from, and you can see the scale in here. So these are quite small works on paper.
Thank
and
you.
now I will take you to the next room, which perhaps resembles the best the environment of surrealist historical exhibitions, which, as I told you, were often entire installations. All of the artworks were arranged in various ways to create an unusual impression on the viewers, on the guests of the exhibitions. This was very typical for surrealists. They enjoyed the various games. They enjoyed playing with the viewer to create amazement, to surprise. So those unusual arrangements of their exhibitions was also part of it. And this room is shows, in this room we show mainly assemblages. So the three-dimensional collages, objects, surrealist objects, mainly by three artists. One of them is Erna Rosenstein that I talked to you about. She was most of her life she was dedicated to painting. That was her main technique. But she's also very famous and known for her surrealist objects that she created mainly at the end of her life in her apartment. Those very strange surrealist objects, most of them untitled, that were created with found objects, very often broken parts of some everyday objects. Here we can see these assemblages created, for example, with false teeth, leather bag, string, ribbon, sponge, etc. You can, if you see closely, you can try to see and interpret it yourself. But in many of her objects,
Yeah,
just 1 second.
Hey, Ted is coming.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry for the delay. Simply.
No problem. We are now in the fourth room of the exhibition,
Yes.
where I'm showing you the surrealist objects, assemblages by mainly three artists.
Yep.
I showed already one assemblage of Erna Rosenstein. Here are some more examples. You can see what kind of objects she used to create those unusual assemblages. This one, for example, uses chocolate boxes. This was a very typical material for her, chocolate boxes with paint, with other added materials. Here we can see a cigarette box that's transformed into a surrealist object, or parts of used, often broken household objects, like an old phone, for example, or a rubbish bin. So these objects are often untitled, often without, we don't know when exactly they were created. This was a big part of this artist's activity at the end of her year and at the end of her life. And this way, as many other surrealists as well, she would give a new life to objects that would otherwise be thrown away. She was fascinated by giving new life to objects, by creating new meanings and finding connections between realities that would otherwise not be possible. We here in this room, you can see also this particular installation that closes the room, that maybe you wondered about it already when we entered here. This is an installation by a contemporary artist, Dominika Olszowy, and this installation was created this year, especially for this exhibition. It's the newest commission of the National Museum in Warsaw, and it's an installation entitled Nocturne, created especially for this exhibition to complement this show, and it represents an idea of the artists to show the world of nighttime events, maybe some strange illusions that come to our minds when we sleep or when we're half asleep. It can remind us of this oniric place that often surrealists commented on or explored in their works. So it's also an opportunity to see very clearly how surrealist ideas and concepts traveled through time and didn't end with the death of André Breton. And this is, as I said in the beginning, the idea of the exhibition to show different surrealist tendencies and concepts exist in time and being transcribed by different artists in different times in various ways. So we can see very clearly here in this installation that those concepts still exist in Polish art nowadays. Yeah, they still inspire artists and are starting points to new creations. So one last view of the room, and I will take you to the next part. Here I can show you, this is maybe a more technical issue, but I thought you might be interested as well in the way we build exhibitions here at the National Museum in Warsaw. In this vitrine, we are showing another work of Erna Rosenstein. So as you can see, as I told you in the beginning, that she is one of the most known artists for her surrealist concepts. You can see by the number of works of her that we present here. These are drawings that are made on very thin paper, almost transparent paper, that were meant to be placed one on top of another in different configurations to see through them and to see how the composition changes depending on in which order they are placed. But for conservation reasons and other reasons, we are not able to show them here in that way. We are not able to put light below and to see the original concept of the artist. That is why the architect of the exhibition created this spot where you can touch the reproductions of those drawings, and you can put them in various configurations. You can change their order. You can place them. One behind the other to see how the composition changes depending on different backgrounds and how you order them. So you can get an idea of how the artist intended it for it to be viewed at the time.
Experimental,
Yeah. So now I'm taking you to the next room, which is a room dedicated to automatism in surrealist art. It's a very important part of our exhibition, because automatism is something that was extremely important to André Breton. It was his original idea as he defined surrealism in his first manifesto, that surrealism is a pure automatism of the brain. He meant to eliminate the conscious to be able to access the subconscious, and various automatic techniques were for surrealists a way to get there and to discover what happens in their brains, in human brain, when all the thoughts are eliminated. And some of the techniques that they used are shown in this room. This wall is dedicated almost entirely to decalcomania, a technique used, for example, by Max Ernst, a very old technique, but many of those techniques were already known many centuries ago, but they were rediscovered by surrealists and popularized by surrealists. And this, for example, the calcomania was often used by Max Ernst, but here in this wall we can see multiple examples by the calcomanias by a Polish artist Alfred Lenica. My favorite is this one, where he explores various colors of the paint that melts together, blends together, and creates these unusual forms. Alfred Lenica was one of the very few artists, or perhaps the only one, who identified himself as a surrealist. He didn't avoid being called a surrealist. He often described his work to have surrealist inspirations. And unlike many Polish artists who, as I told you before, were not directly tied to the movement, didn't identify themselves as surrealists, Alfred Lenica did. And you can see how many how much he explored the automatic techniques so important to the surrealists. Not only the calcomania, because he was also experimented with automatic drawing. Here you can see some examples of it. As you may know, surrealists, when they used automatic techniques, they sometimes left it the way the coincidence created the composition, but some of them took it a step farther. So they first created an automatic drawing or an automatic painting, the calcomania, and then tried to find some connections, try to identify what it can resemble, what it can mean. And then added some other elements. So in these drawings, you can see it clearly that the artist first an automatic abstract drawing and then decided to add some colors to bring it farther and maybe develop the composition.
Mm.
So now I will take you to another room. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me and add them and ask them whenever you feel like. Yes.
I have one question. The
Yes.
one painting which we saw right now, a little bit like animistic style. It's a
This
little
one?
bit different. Yeah, it's a little bit different visual from others. And I just mentioned, can it be surrealism? Like, so that I just was wondering why or how is it this is different from others, and what is the character of this as a surrealism? Yeah.
So this part here shows some examples of abstract surrealism. So we saw before some examples of figurative painting that would be very unusual compositions showing strange characters or landscapes. Here, this small part of the exhibition is dedicated entirely to automatism. So the surrealist concept of letting go all the thoughts and just trying to arrive to the subconscious just by letting their hands draw or letting the paint flow without any control. They declined all the control. They tried to get rid of the logic and the rational thinking to explore what the unconscious human brain creates. And this was very connected with their fascination by the recent psychological experiments and theories, for example, by Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung. So the psychological automatism. This is why this doesn't represent anything figurative very often. But you can also find, we don't show them here in this exhibition, but you can find automatic drawings by Max Ernst, for example, or other surrealists that are not abstract, that are figurative, and they represent some landscapes or characters, but they seem to be also like a picture from a dream, very oniric, very strange, which is what surrealists believed was the unconscious work of the mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I feel like, okay, one object is not have to be 100% surrealism or whatever, but like process what you showed and the narrative from the artist's past works and how it came to now is part of the show. So
this is here. This part is more about it's more about the process. It's less about the result. Is very important because it is the result of unconscious mind, but the emphasis is on the process of creating it. And here in this room, I will show you some more of the figurative art, because here we arrive to the room that's entitled A Rediscovery of Magic. After the Second World War, Breton and other French surrealists and other artists focused around André Breton. They shifted towards the idea of exploring magic, spiritualism, occultism. The war experience changed a lot. Their first definition of surrealism, their first aim of canceling the thoughts and focusing on the automatism was less powerful at that time. They were mainly fascinated by magic and occultism, and also art created by non-European cultures. So this room is dedicated to that, and I will first show you masks by Max Ernst. this is one of the most important loans in our exhibitions, Max Ernst's masks that arrived here from Centre Pompidou in Paris. And Max Ernst was one of those artists, one of the original members of the surrealist group, who during the war had to flee Europe, and he settled in Arizona together with his wife, Dorothea Tanning, also a surrealist artist. And there he was fascinated by Native American art, by tribal art, which he incorporated in his work. He collected this type of work, and he also was fascinated by those cultures and by their symbolics and aesthetics. So here you can see this was a much broader interest of the surrealists, and not only the original surrealist circle, because next to it we are presenting the masks created by Bronisław Linke, a Polish artist, also interested in other cultures. But on the other side of it, you can see an installation by an artist, Władysław Hasior, which bears resemblance to some items associated with Polish folk art. So the interest of Władysław Hasior was very the interest of Władysław Hasior had very strong connection with folk Polish art. He was greatly inspired by the culture of the region of the Tatra Mountains in the south of Poland. So we can see this connection, we can interpret this as a connection between the interest of the surrealist movement after war and the Polish artists of the same time, especially as we know that this was also the time when Polish artists on occasions traveled to Paris, to France. They were familiar with these new interests in other cultures and in magic and occultism by surrealists. So sometimes it's tied to their own local tradition, and sometimes this interest this interest came as an inspiration from what they knew surrealist art. So contemporary art of their fellow artists in Europe was about. Here, on the other hand, I would like to show you this painting for the reason of its author. It's a very interesting painting of Jerzy Kujawski. I will show you his name. This is how we write his name, Jerzy Kujawski, and the title of the painting is entitled Our Dichotomy of Suns. And Jerzy Kujawski is a very important figure here because he was an artist who emigrated to France and lived in Paris from 1945. And he was a link post-war, after Second World War, he was a link between Polish artistic community and Polish artistic scene and the international surrealist movement. He is believed to be the first Polish artist who fully understood surrealism. And this painting that you see here had a sister painting, like a twin painting, very similar to this one, that only differed in small details. And this painting was exhibited in the surrealist exhibition entitled Surrealism in 1947. That was presented in Galerie Mag in Paris, which was a very important post-war exhibition of the surrealists, and Jerzy Kujawski was the only Polish artist to ever been exhibited together alongside the original surrealist circle. And we have this painting here that stands out the most, but Jerzy Kujawski was also the artist who experimented with surrealist techniques, also automatic techniques. So one of them you can see here. We talked about the calcomania and automatic drawing, but another automatic technique is grattage. It is done in the way that the canvas or any other surface is covered in color paint and then covered with, for example, black surface, and then the black surface is scratched in a certain way to arrive to the color beneath it. So this is believed to be another surrealist automatic technique. I can show you a close-up so that it's visible how the technique is done. Can you see it properly?
Yeah, we can see that.
So Jerzy Kujawski is a very important artist for us here for these links that he created many opportunities for Polish artists to meet the surrealist circle in Paris, in France, and he also experimented with various surrealist techniques and ideas in his own work.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
I hear that there are many immigration from Poland to Paris or other Western countries, I think. And do they also meet to the cultural difference between France and the Polish, not only different philosophy of the surrealism, but also like different culture about the country itself? Like because there must be, some cultural aspect about different country, right? From the Poland, when you see. So
yes,
are there some
I'm sure there
effect on the
was
painting?
many cultural differences, especially when you think that at that time Poland was after the Second World War, Poland was not a part of Soviet Union, but was on the eastern side of the Iron Curtain. So the reality of life was very much different here in Ukraine or in Eastern Germany than in Western Europe. So it was not only a cultural difference that we would notice today as well, but it was also a very different post-war reality between the Eastern and Western bloc. So I'm sure, yes, and it was not also an easy thing to travel, to emigrate, or to just go and visit another country in Western Europe. So this connection was very valuable for artists at that time because it was not possible to travel just like we can today. So this connection was often the only one that would enable them to get to know the contemporary tendencies in art, to get familiar with art, modern contemporary art around the world. So yeah, thank you for this question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I often still see the political trauma from the surrealism people, especially from the east side of the Europe. So that, I just wonder even if they escape to the west side, they still keep stuck with that political trauma and somehow try to express this like negative thought. But I just wonder if they are released from this traumas, or they still even want to keep it and express it as the art piece, or it is often discussed as well whether surrealism was
political in Poland. There are various interpretations, and it also very much depends on the artists, on certain artists, because surrealism was in its origin not a political movement, but it is often discussed that in Poland it had, like, the post-war surrealism was different in Poland than it was in France. The inspirations were different, and also the means. Surrealism post-war was a means also to deal with the war trauma, and it is, we can see differences between Polish art of that time, and they are very, very clear. This topic will come back also at the end of the exhibition, so we can talk more about it in the last room. Now we are in the in the next room. That further discusses the idea of magic and occultism that fascinated surrealists after the war, and Polish artists, since they already had more and more connection with the West, they were exploring it as well. And I wanted to point out these 3 black cards in this context, because they were created not so long ago. They were already created in the 60s by the Oneiron group, which was a group consisting of several artists. Here I'm showing you their names: Urszula Broll, Antoni Halor, Zygmunt Stuchlik, Andrzej Urbanowicz, and Henryk Waniek. It's the group of artists coming from Katowice in Silesia region in Poland, and this group, the artists of the group, point out that they were inspired by surrealism, that their activity can be linked to the surrealism fascination with magic, and their other interests. And we are showing these cards to also point out another important issue of the surrealist games, and the fascination of finding strange and unusual relations between objects and ideas created in collectively in many people's minds all together, because how these black cards were created and why we have so many artists' names here. Each of these cards was created by all of them together. They created 30 of these cards, and they were created in the way that one of the artists would start the main theme of the card, and every other artist would then add a part of it. So these cards were all traveling between the studios, the ateliers of those artists, and each one of them was adding a part of it. So we can see. Let's take a look at this one closer. Sometimes those objects, some part of this composition may seem unrelated. This is a composition that was born in many people's minds all together. And it's also an example of a variation over a surrealist game that you may know, the Exquisite Corpse game from French Cadavre Exquis, which was a very typical game for surrealists. It was first used and invented by them in 1925. I believe the first players were Jacques Prévert and Marcel Duhamel and one other person who played a verbal version of this game, which goes the way that first person writes one word, the second person writes another word without knowing the previous one. There's a certain grammatic order, and this way a sentence is created, only that each person doesn't know what was created before. This way, a very unusual, unexpected phrases come to life, and this is how the first sentence was created. An exquisite corpse will drink a new wine. This is how the name of the game was invented, and the game can also be played visually as a drawing by 3 or more people drawing one drawing without knowing the other's ideas. So this is an example of that, and as I told you in the previous room, surrealists were often inspired by local art, by local cultures, but not only. They were also, because of their interest in human brain and its internal world, inner workings, they were also inspired by art that's described sometimes as naive art or self-thought artists, children's art, or people who suffer from psychological disorders. So this here we are presenting one of the artists, Teofil Oczepka, who was a self-taught artist, also coming from Katowice. He was working in a coal mine, but in his free time he started painting. It was also related to his interest in occultism and magic. And he used painting as a way to transfer his concepts, his ideas related to occultism and various spiritual concepts. He started an occultist group in Katowice, where together with other artists and other members interested in those topics, they would explore these ideas. And here I want to show you one of his paintings. This is a composition called Mammoth, Saturn's Lion, because Teofil Oczepka believed that Saturn is a planet on which life exists. He believed that there is a lot of fauna and flora, and that it's a very vivid and lively planet. So here we can see one of the characters that he didn't completely invent himself. He was also inspired by writings of a medieval, or not medieval, perhaps German thinker Jakob Lorber, who described the characters, the creatures living on the planet Saturn. And the mammoth, or otherwise described as a lion, is one of them. The interesting thing, you can see the arch behind the mammoth is supposed to be the Saturn's orbit, the ring of the planet. And here you can see the self-portrait of this artist. This is Teofil Oczepka, and you can see him here surrounded by the characters and creatures deriving from his imagination. You can see him here in a pose quite typical for painters' self-portraits. He's standing here with a paintbrush, but the paintbrush is there caught by another creature. And here, instead of a palette, of a painting palette, you can see him holding this mysterious bird as well. So this is a part dedicated to those interests, today interpreted through the lens of surrealism. And continuing the topic of magic and occultism, while leaving this room, we encounter this mysterious installation, which is a work by contemporary artist Gorzka Matsuga, and it represents life-sized, you can see, for scale. I'm holding a book next to it. It's a life-sized model of a woman. This is Helena Blavatsky, who was the founder of the 19th century Theosophical Society, and she's a historical person. She founded this Theosophical Society, and she's believed to have had paranormal skills. This is why she is here represented while levitating above these two chairs. And this is a work that arrived to this exhibition on loan. But it's a work by contemporary artists. So another moment here in this show that highlights the surrealist concepts and interests still remain in Polish and international art throughout the years.
It's a story, no?
Excuse me?
Very famous story. This woman. Yeah.
There is a story behind in the historical story. Okay.
I don't know how popular the story is, but we know that this Theosophical Society existed, and that Helena Blavatsky was the founder of it. She was a historical character, a historical person, and she founded this society, and she led it through the years, and she's mainly known to be this person who pioneered in this area, also thanks to her paranormal skills and activities.
Very interesting sculptures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it's also in the architecture of the exhibition. It is a very interesting point. We're close to the end of the exhibition, but the way this sculpture, this installation is arranged here, it also creates this moment of surprise that surrealists so much liked to play with the viewer, to play with the guests of the exhibition and surprise them at every moment. And here I bring you to the last room of the exhibition, which is dedicated entirely to the Faz movement. I will show you here on the wall how it's spelled, the International Faz movement. This movement was a group founded by Edward Jager in 1954, and it's derived from the ideas of surrealism and the achievements of surrealism, but it was a broader movement. It was more democratic and more open than the surrealist group of André Breton. And it gathered artists from around the world who were inspired by surrealism and surrealist ideas, but they wanted to develop them further, or maybe also connect with some other ideas with art, be free to explore and to continue the surrealist legacy, but also be free and open to other ideas. And however, Edward Jager and André Breton, still in the 50s and 60s, often collaborated. Occasionally, the Faz and Surrealist movement would hold exhibitions together. They would meet and exchange, and we are showing it here as a very important conclusion to this exhibition, because Polish artists were also some of them were also part of this movement. So here in this room, we are showing works by artists who were part of the Faz movement, and in the middle here in this vitrine we are showing the Faz magazines, because the Faz group also published their magazines. They published texts and visual works and other explorations by various artists. And in some of these magazines we can see reproductions of the works by Polish artists. For example, here this one is a work by Zbigniew Makowski. This one here is a work by Zbigniew Makowski, reproduced here in the Faz magazine. Zbigniew Makowski was one of the artists who was part of the Faz movement, was greatly inspired by the surrealist movement. He traveled to Paris very often post-war, after Second World War, and he met André Breton and associated his work and his inspirations very directly with surrealism. And I would like to show you here this tiny work that's not maybe very well visible, but it's very important for the reason of one of the Faz group exhibitions in 1959, because this was an exhibition. This was an exhibition that Faz movement organized in Kraków, in Poland, in Gallery Krzysztofory. This was one of the galleries in Kraków where the exhibition was organized. And here, this brings us to the topic of the political meaning of this surrealist art in post-war Poland, because the exhibition in 1959 was first exhibition that put Polish artists on the map of the world in the surrealist context. It was an exhibition of an international artists movement organized in a Polish gallery. So this was a historical moment, and also marked by the fact that at the opening ceremony of this exhibition, there was played a recording of a speech by André Breton, who addressed the Polish intellectuals and Polish artists. So it was a speech prepared by Breton especially for this exhibition, and it was played at the opening, welcoming the guests and opening the show. So this is remembered as an important moment that would, for the first time, officially place Polish artists in the context of surrealist art, surrealist achievements through the Faz group that would explore those ideas further. And one last part that I would like to show you. It's this little conclusion to the exhibition, where the curator Hanna Doroszuk brings the topic of surrealist games, as this was very important for both French surrealists and Polish artists inspired by them. The game of accident, the game of social interaction, of connecting different ideas, sprouting in various artists' minds, and they liked to play social games, as this would allow them to open their imagination, to set their imagination free, to use the coincidence that happened that would spark various ideas. So in this little part ending the exhibition, we can see examples of games created by Zbigniew Makowski, the artist I mentioned in regards to the Faz magazines, who often created those playful installations or artworks that referred to some kind of word game or other game that was meant to spark the imagination, such as this wheel that would allow you to create coincidental combinations of various words that could then be a start to creating some further unusual connections, or the tarot card, which was also the tarot, the art of reading tarot was something the surrealists explored, not only Zbigniew Makowski, but surrealists from the Breton circle, such as himself, who would create and be fascinated by the art of reading tarot, but also Victor Brauner and other artists who painted their own cards and tried to understand the symbolics of tarot. So that would be the conclusion of the show. Here I can show you another part that was created for our visitors to try out their artistic and surrealist compositions. Here we are showing in the vitrine another work by Zbigniew Makowski, which is this colorful blocks meant to play with the form and shape. And next to it, we are inviting our visitors to create their own assemblage by using the objects in here that can remind also various objects used by surrealists in their artworks on view. So this way we try to engage with our audience and invite them to also play and discover their own imagination.
Oh.
And that's the end of the show. But I'm open to answer any of your questions if you have any further questions or if you would like to discuss any of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the great lecture and the great tour. Okay. 飯田先
Thank
生
you very
何か
much.
ちょっと僕ちょっと遅れたんで先にもしあれば何かお願いします。
I have a question, and sorry. It was very interesting to see the contemporary artists were also introduced. So there are many surrealism artists in Japan. Yeah, they look very similar.
Also today, contemporary
Japanese
artists.
people.
Mhm.
And why?
何かやれば言います。
最近のコンテンポラリーアーティストと一緒に展示してるのは、すごくこう、なんだろう、理解を深めるためだっていう話があったんだけど、なぜそういう取り組みをしてるか。
今回そこで展示をしている取り組みですか？
そうそうそう、なんかそのアーティストと、現代のアーティストとシュルレアリストの作品を一緒に展示してるのがすごい面白かった。
The interesting point is that you have that combination between the contemporary artists nowadays and this sure times, which is like 50, 70 years ago. So this combination between the now and the let's say old one, yeah. Do you have some comments?
This was very important for the curator of this show, Hanna Doroszuk, to show surrealism in this way, because as I mentioned in the beginning, there was no official surrealist movement at any point in history in Poland. So this exhibition is an attempt to show various surrealist tendencies, symptoms in art, or to interpret many of those artists' work from the surrealist perspective. And also this on one hand is already an attempt to show surrealism in Poland as a more broad tendency as a more broad thing than just a timely and geographically limited movement. So to show that there were surrealistic inspirations here around at the same time, but that they also persisted through time, and that surrealism is no longer interpreted as this closed movement, but that surrealist inspirations and ideas and aesthetics as well, they are visible also in contemporary art in the 60s, in the 80s, and in any other point in history. So this is a way of showing this through juxtaposition of the historical works together with contemporary works that we brought here for this exhibition, but also a big part of it is the commission of the newest installation that Dominika Olszowa created particularly for this exhibition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you very much.
I'd like to ask you, maybe I don't
Yes.
in the beginning, maybe you already mentioned, and then maybe I didn't listen, but I would like to know if the exhibition is mentioning the definition between, let's say, improvisation, coincident, play, unconscious, subconscious. You know, it's all different words and different sense, right? For example, in the end, you had a box which people can play with, or you know, maybe you would say ensemblage, or maybe you say coincident, but also you are using the word unconsciousness and subconsciousness. So are they all different definition, different meaning, and as the exhibition, what are you defining about this words?
Yes, in the room dedicated mainly to automatism, this topic is most visible. And then this is where we focus on explaining the difference between the conscious and subconscious. This is the English terms that we can use. In Polish, it's a bit different. Subconscious and unconscious, there's not so much linguistic difference. So I believe we should say subconscious here in this case. So this is where we can focus more on these topics. Also in the room dedicated to photography, because this is also where automatism is mentioned for the first time. However, we have to remember that the Polish surrealism was not so formalized and not so dogmatic as the French surrealism, where André Breton issued several manifestos, and the group was very officially determined by certain concepts and what made them belong to the movement and what didn't. In Poland, this didn't take place, so the inspirations that Polish artists derived were more on a formal level, or where the contacts with the French surrealism were not so close. So very often the artist experimented with the techniques, experimented on the formal level with different forms on the visual level, but not so much on the dogmatic level or the conceptual level. Some of them, yes, but it was never so by the book, let's say, as in the Breton circle. So we do mention this, and we define and we try to explain the terms the way André Breton would define them. But here we don't focus on it as much.
Okay, thank you. Next question. It's a question to the National Museum, so it could be maybe taboo to ask you, but I cannot stop asking. One question about a drug. Okay. Some of the work obviously in the drug, I would say. are there some of the archive or some of the record about the relation between artworks or artists and drugged? Would you comment something?
Yeah, I can comment. I don't. I'm not. I don't think I have like such detailed information about these particular artists that are here on show. I wouldn't say I'm an expert in this matter, but we don't. I don't have information on those artists presented here, and it's not really discussed in the in the context of this exhibition. This issue hasn't really arise in our discussions with the curator and others. But if you are interested in this topic, you might want to explore the work of Stanisław Ignacy Witkiewicz, Witkacy, as he's called. Because this is an artist whom we don't present here because this has to be a selection, but his work could also be interpreted from the surrealist perspective. And he was an artist who used a lot of substances to influence his perception and his artistic expression as well. And this is very widely known and a very popular topic because he would document everything very precisely. He would write down which substances he used while painting a certain artwork, so then he could analyze the results and how his brain and artistic expression is influenced by those substances. So if you are interested, I can write you the name of him, and this is a topic which is often discussed and very well researched and described. So this could be interesting here. And we had a big exhibition of Witkacy 2 years ago that was entirely dedicated to him. He's a very famous artist in Poland and very important to Polish avant-garde. So in this exhibition here today, we don't show his works, but as this is a very broad angle of understanding surrealist art, his work could also be understood that way.
Okay, thank you. Now about the museum and the selection. You as curators, you selected artists and artworks and made a concept through the exhibition, for the exhibitions. So it's like, let's say you filtered something. So there must be some of the unfiltered works which you couldn't show this time, and you couldn't define it in this exhibition as the surrealism, let's say. So how was the selection, or how did you filter, or how was it difficult for select filter for this exhibition?
Well, I can speak on behalf of the curator here to say that it was a very difficult selection because the curator of the show, Hanna Doroszuk, she had a very difficult task to show surrealism in Poland as an exhibition. This topic has been discussed before in publications, in exhibitions of certain artists, but it's the first exhibition that shows surrealist tendencies in Polish art in such a complex way. And it is a big exhibition for us from our perspective because it's in our biggest temporary exhibition space, but it's not a huge space to be able to show every surrealist aspect of Polish art, especially that we're showing works starting from the 20th until present day. Starting from the 20s until the present day. So it's a very long period of time, and the selection was many very different aspects. It was important to show how broad understanding of surrealism in Polish art can be, so to show various techniques. I know that the emphasis of the curator was very often exactly on the techniques, on experiments, to show in how many different ways artists experimented and explored the surrealist ideas. So collage, grattage, assemblage, to show multiple forms, to show multiple time periods, so to show how the inspirations from surrealism could be seen before the Second World War, but also during and after, and how Polish artistic environment responded to the changes in the surrealist movement in Paris. So there could be much more artworks presented here, and it was a very difficult selection. But the main idea of the exhibition is to show it as a very complex and a very long-lasting concept.
Okay, thank you so much.
いや
飯田先生は何
Thank
かあり
you.
ますか？
大丈夫です。Good tours.
Yeah,
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
thank
If
you
you
so
have
much.
any question afterwards, or if you need to know how the names or
Yeah.
places are spelled for the subtitles, please let me know and I will send you everything.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, okay, Zuzanna, thank you so much for today. We are going to finish
you.
this tour. Yeah, and as you said, keep in touch and let's make it this lecture better. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, hope to see you
Goodbye.
again. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hi, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.